Welcome to Don't Pick the Scab Podcast, where we help men over 40 rebuild their lives and thrive after divorce. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Chad Taylor, a clinical psychotherapist, podcast host, and fearless explorer of the messy, uncomfortable truths that often go unspoken. Chad specializes in the point where insight stops working and avoidance quietly takes over. He works with people who've done the reading, learned the language, and gained the awareness, but still struggle to translate that knowledge into meaningful change, especially when relationships, conflict, and intimacy challenge their comfort zones. Chad is the host of It's You, Oh Fuck, It's Me, a podcast where he facilitates raw, unsanitized conversations about unconscious behaviors, relationship patterns, blame and shame, and why we keep repeating the same dynamics even when we know better. Get ready for a grounded, no-nonsense conversation that's sure to challenge conventional narratives and bring clarity to the deeper struggles of life post-divorce. Welcome, Chad, to the podcast, and tell us about yourself. I got some questions for you.
Yeah, great. Welcome. Welcome for having me, really. I love when I hear that introduction. It makes me feel more important than I am. I sometimes think, did I write this book or?
That's me. That's me.
That's me. Yeah,
Oh,
I guess the way I fell into this role is through my own downfalls, I suppose, my own relationship collapses, my own life collapses. I didn't just come out of school and decide that I wanted to become a psychotherapist. I came out of school and I suppose I'd be truthful, fucked my life up for enough years that in and out of recovery addiction, and more so that I then decided I want to give back to the world. I've done enough of my own therapy and done enough of my own study on myself. I think it was time that I gave that back.
So your podcast title is so interesting. It's You, Oh Fuck, It's Me, pulls no punches. What inspired you such a raw and unapologetic approach?
I think I blamed everybody else for really my own life from a young age. Okay. I think, and even now, I think the world's become more polarized where I don't agree with the old school way of life, but I also think we're getting to a point where there's no accountability and there's no responsibility. So if we go straight into the topic of this exact podcast that you've got, I wrote a book. How the podcast come about was I knew I wanted to write a book. I'd always talked about wanting to write a book. And I went on a holiday in December last year to Bali. I go to Bali for a few months of the year, unwind and relax, and recovery over there is really good. Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and there's a lot of expats and a lot of solid meetings over there. So I almost go over there. It's almost, I call it like a rehabilitation month without being in a real rehabilitation centre. The food is amazing, and I guess for me, I go over there to recharge. I will move to Indonesia at some point. Right now, I'm not my lifestyle doesn't allow for that right now. So I went over there, okay, and then this book just started flowing out of me, right? This book, and it was originally going to be called I'm Fucked, You're Fucked, Why Being Wrong is Foreplay. Because of the amount of, I think most relationships get formed on an unconscious...
not the connection.
An unconscious connection.
So what are some of the most common misconceptions men have about healing and moving forward after a divorce? What are some of the most common misconceptions that men have?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there's many. I think there's so many. I think there's she was the problem, really, is probably the biggest one. She was the problem in the relationship. If I shouldn't have chose her. This exact thing here again, you, and you probably know this from your own healing, and you know that when we're pointing the finger, there's three pointing back at us, right? There's generally one pointing to the sky, whatever you believe in, the universe, God, doesn't really matter, higher power, and then there's three pointing back at us. So whenever I'm pointing the finger at her, even if she was 95% in the wrong, the bit that I can change is my 5%. Yep. is my fight. So I think the misconception is I've got to deal with the grief of her, and I'm going to go to a therapist, or I'm going to go to a men's group, or I'm going to go to somebody, and I'm going to talk about her. And by talking about her, that's going to bring me healing. That's not really, it's a bit like me talking about going to the gym and then coming in and showing you the new runners I've bought and the amazing training bag. And then you ask me, so how's the gym going? And I'm like, I go there and I sit down on the mat and I put my towel out and I sit down on the weight bench and I get the weights out. And then I generally play on my phone for half an hour and then I go home. That's almost therapy, where you go to a therapist or a men's group and you focus on the other person. That's what I think the misconception is, that grief is processing what they did to us. I think grief is processing what happened in the relationship and what part we had to play in it. And I think that's very hard for most of us.
Gotcha. So how do you approach the gap between intellectual understanding and lived change in your work with clients? There's kind of like a little bit of a separation there.
There's embodiment of a concept, and then there's understanding. Like I think you mentioned, I'm sure you publicly say what your profession is here, but if you, like I could read about how to become a dentist and I could study it for 10 years and I could do all these things. I used to be a plumber, a tradesman, and I'd say this is the problem in the world with most. In Australia, we have psychologists, and most people see a psychologist rather than a psychotherapist like me, because in Australia they get free, you get up to 10 to 20 sessions a year free with a psychologist that's government rebated. So if me or you were feeling grief or anxiety or depression, we can go to the local GP, which majority of that again is covered under what we call Medicare. And I'm giving you a bit of an understanding of the Australian health system here, and I'll speed it up. But so the reason I'm talking about this is, under the medical model, a psychologist in Australia can train, do their 6 years of university, and then come here and sit exactly where I am right now without ever doing a session of their own therapy, which is fucking crazy.
Wow.
So in other words, you learn to become a dentist by what you did at uni, and you never practice with the tools. You never open someone's real mouth, and then you turn up all of a sudden and you borrow some money and you own your own practice. And the first client that comes to you is pretty much the first time you've had a real life human being and worked on their teeth. And that's a psychology model. So wow. I say to clients regularly that I go to therapy once a week. I seen my therapist yesterday. I go to therapy once a week whenever I'm in Australia, and we catch up on the phone and have phone calls when I'm away. Because there's a saying in AA, see to it that your own house is in order. You can't transmit what you haven't got. So in other words, I can't give away what I haven't got.
Gotcha. So in your experience, what role does shame play in preventing men from growing or stepping into their authentic selves?
I think shame is, it's almost like this thing that we don't go to. It's like, I won't actually open that up, because if I open that up, and I think this is all happening unconsciously, none of this is conscious. Science says by the time we're 35, 95% of what we do in our daily lives is unconscious patterning. So in other words, 95% of us is on autopilot. So the shame, I think it's almost like I'll leave the shame over here and I won't discuss it, because if I don't look at it, it doesn't exist. And I think Brené Brown, who, is a lot smarter than me and a lot more evolved than me, she talks a lot about this concept of guilt almost being that I've done a bad thing, and shame being I am a bad thing. So I think understanding that, I had a woman reach out to me that I went to school with. She's seen my podcast and she's seen my book, and she reached out to me about 3 days ago and said, there's something happened when we were teenagers, and I feel like you played a part in that and almost condoned something that shouldn't have happened. And I was like, fucking, of course. I was like, wow, this is not good. Is she going to say that one of my mates raped her? Or I had no idea what was going on there. But I'm open. As you can see, I'm an open book. This is how I do therapy. It's like, you come to therapy, and if I want you to reveal yourself to me, I'm happy to reveal myself to you, because it's not I sit here with a notepad and I make notes about you and I nod my head and so how did that make you feel? So anyway, she reached out, and I was like, and I didn't even want to show my partner when this message first come through, because I was like, fuck, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
And I think most people would have either ignored the message or just denied all responsibility before it even started because of that shame, because I was like, it was brewing in me. Anyway, she said I used to host a lot of house parties during high school, and I was in drug and alcohol rehabilitation centre at 22 years old. So my 13 or 14 to 22 was pretty much a blur, but that doesn't absolve me of any responsibility either, right? That doesn't just say I was drunk, so I have to really be careful, because this person obviously has got a trauma or a wound in them it's been 29 years or 27 years since I finished high school.
Yep.
She's been carrying this, and she said, I haven't really thought about this until now, but seeing your face in your book really brought this up for me. Anyway, it turned out that a guy that I knew was at a party, and that there was a few guys around encouraging them to sleep together in the room. And I was at your house. And I had to say to her, look, if I played any part in being a dickhead back then and doing what we all do back then, I really apologise. And is there anything I can do what can I do now to try and heal that for you? And I think for her, just being heard, and she said, like, it had nothing really to do with you. It was just that it was in your house. The party was at your house. So we're all looking for someone to blame, right? And she wasn't looking to blame. I think what she was expecting was, she was probably expecting me just to shut it off like most people would, because of the shame around it But for me, it was very healing. And in the end, I turned around and I sent her a free book, and we got not close as in friendship close, but so where I'm going with that is, she probably carried a lot of shame around whatever happened there. I didn't go into it. I would have carried a lot of shame when she brought that up. And now two people can come away from that feeling heard and feeling understood and feeling good about themselves, rather than that comes at us and the shame of it, what might be coming from that might be too much. So we just ignore it, shut it down, block her, do whatever we want to do.
Okay.
So I feel proud that I could actually go into that and not having any idea, and I don't feel shame. I maybe feel shame at what happened and what we all do at that age, but personally I don't feel shame. I feel proud that I can turn an event like that into something positive, and now she's in the mid-40s and I'm in my mid-40s, that two people could come away from that feeling heard and feeling understood.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So you emphasize the importance of staying present in uncomfortable territory, and that's part of healing, right? When you're present in an uncomfortable territory, how can men build the emotional capacity to stay in that territory?
I think as much as people are going to frown upon this, I think getting some kind of mindfulness or meditation practice, because if we're not present, like most of us, if we look, and I'm not going to give it a teaching on the brain, but to sum it up quickly, there's three parts of the brain. The one at the back virtually is what plants have. It does the things behind the scenes. The one in the middle is where fight, flight, freeze and fawn lie. And the one at the front is like the frontal lobe or the prefrontal cortex, and this is where we can make decisions. So the number one thing is, when we get triggered, this actually, on a brain scan, this actually goes offline and we go straight back into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn they've added now. So the number one thing I think we need to learn is, how can we get this back online quicker? How can we get this back online quicker? Because if we go into a jail, and I work in jails and institutions, a lot of people say I blacked out. I don't even remember killing that person. And it's not even without drugs and alcohol. I don't even really remember that happening, because our brains literally go offline. And then we add drugs and alcohol and things like that into it, and then this is numbed even more. So the number one thing I think you can do is, have someone to talk about these things of owning your triggered point. Like, I get triggered just as much as the next person, but I think what I'm getting better at is, and I'm far from perfect, is getting this back online faster, because literally when I'm triggered, I'm gone. I'm
Correct.
actually gone.
Wow. What are some of the comfortable narratives men clinging to that actually hold them back? What are some of the common narratives?
No, they're all the same. Coming from a tradie, if there's any women listening to this, I don't subscribe to this thought as well, but things like, over here, there's this sort of joke that tradies will say on job sites, and if they didn't have cunts, you'd throw rocks at them and crazy things like this, which is, I don't really think there's enough education around how to respect women and how then for women to respect us. So I think the narrative is that she should respect me even though I don't respect her. I think people ask me a lot in therapy, what do you think the number one quality of a relationship is? Is it trust? Is it love? Is it honesty? And I, number one, think it's respect. So I think one of the number one things that holds us back is this mutual respect. Even porn. If we're watching porn, and I'm not bagging anyone out there, if we're watching porn, that's someone's sister, that's someone's mother, that's someone's child, right? For any guys out there, I'm not saying this because I'm a Christian or have a religious belief around it. I just think it doesn't subscribe to me that generally that person in that video probably isn't really of some sane mind, even if they believe they are. It's so coming back to, let's start learning how to respect women, and it has to come from men. I see this a lot at the moment where Louis Theroux just did that documentary on the manosphere, right? And I'm seeing a lot of stuff on social media. As a mother of two sons, this is how I'm dealing with the manosphere movie. And no disrespect to the women out there, but it's a bit like me trying to give you a lecture on fucking childbirth. Don't do it. Get your sons into a man who's got respect for women and they can explain it to them. They're not going to hear it from you. They're not going to hear it from you. You're just going to either make them, I'm going to be honest here, you're going to make them little boys that never grow up for the rest of their lives, and then they'll choose a partner who's dominant and almost another mother figure, or they'll get to 17 or 18 and they'll start following someone like Andrew Tate and the people in the manosphere that you don't like, and then they'll become too far down that way, where there's a happy path, really trying to get them somewhere. Men's group, maybe not sport, because there's a lot of that mentality in sport, right? Get them to a group of men that will teach them that let's build up women for what they are and let's not pull them down, because we're in a crazy time in the world right now where it's like masculinity seems to be toxic. There's no talk around healthy masculinity, or there's not enough.
Let's switch gears to co-parenting.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the number one things that my men have a hard time with, they can't let go of not trying to control what happens at the ex's house. That's huge for a man.
Yeah, and I've had this morning.
Yeah.
I had a client with this morning.
Wow. What can you tell men out there? What are some of the ways they can let that go? Because that was hard for me too at the beginning, but eventually I let it go. Help my men out there.
Unless your child is unsafe or they're being neglected or abused, it's none of your fucking business what goes on in the other house. And that's pretty harsh.
There you go.
But it's a bit like me and I've done this a lot. Like I've only been married once, but my first partner, my daughter was 2.5 when we separated, and she left our daughter with me. So I pretty much raised her, and she's a great woman. She's a great person. My daughter was closer to me. I think I really had to learn there when my daughter was with her for every second weekend that she could parent her how she wanted to parent her. And as long as she didn't disrespect me and bag me about the way I did it. So it's a mutual thing here, guys. Like, it's not like you're all the problem, right? So what I had to learn was that she got a new partner quicker than I did. So I had to it was hard for me, right? My daughter would go to her mother within 3 months, or let's say, and if she's ever listening to this, I don't think there was any unfaithfulness. And even if there was, our relationship wasn't in a good place, right? There's no projection or blame here, but it's easier for a woman to find a man than it is for a man to find a woman, I think, just naturally, personally, right? So she was with a new partner before I was, and that was really hard when my 2.5-year-old or almost 3-year-old will come home and talk about, me and mum, and I won't say his name, but I'll pretend it's me and David and mum did this on the weekend, or David's son, blah, 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 and me did this on the weekend. And that was really fucking hard because we were going through a financial settlement. I was trying to finish renovating a house. We just started building another one. I was left with the mortgage, all these sorts of things. I was under intense pressure. And I probably didn't behave the way I didn't actually interfere too much, but there was a time where I did have a go at her about that. But one thing I didn't involve my daughter. I didn't involve my daughter in that. But I guess, and then again, my next relationship, we separated, and that was I left the home when she was 16 months old because of our relationship. So I haven't had much luck with this, or not much luck. I've got good experience to tell you what it looks like when I've been through it. And again, It was very hard because we have different views on life. And she's an amazing mum, but she would do things like, and still does, dye my daughter's hair bright pink when she was like 4 years old. And she'd turn up and all my friends and family would be going, I can't fucking believe she does this and you've got to put a stop to it and this is just wrong and it looks so tacky. And so I'm almost therapizing them and saying, hey, look, as much as I don't really like it, and if it was my choice, it wouldn't be happening, I actually have no fucking control over what's going on in that home. If she was being neglected and left here and there was unsafe men in the home, I'd speak up. But so I guess what I'm saying out there is that sometimes we try and control things to make ourselves feel better. Why do we try and control something? Because we feel out of control.
Yeah. And we talked about before, I told you that I have a friend who went through a shit show of co-parenting. And he finally figured out after a couple of months that he had to love his kids more than he hated his ex.
Oh, I love that.
And that's what got him through it. And
I love it.
Now the kids are grown and gone, but that was the one thing that got him through it, because every time his blood pressure would rise, he would think about his kids. So I love that. That's a real big thing for guys. And guys out there, you got to relax. You can't control everything, like you said. Let it go. But some of these guys just beat their heads against the wall, and everything doesn't have to be a battle.
No. And you know what? The kids pick, even if you think you're hiding it from them, the kids pick up on it.
Oh, God, kids are smart. Oh, yeah.
I can say that both my daughters had no idea that there was ever really any tension with me and their mothers after the separation. And I'm proud of that from both of them, and I'm proud of that for me. That I got to one point when my daughter was probably about 5, maybe 6, I can't remember, and she'd come home from seeing her mum and she'd say, do you know my mum? Because she couldn't remember us ever being together. And she'd say, do you know my mum? Her name's blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, yeah, I know your mum, darling. She'd say, how do you know my mum? She was so foreign that she didn't even realise that me and her mum lived together and obviously co-created her.
Yeah. What is the deal? This is one of my personal questions. When the man starts dating, why do they gravitate to someone like the ex?
Because they're trying to heal. We're trying to heal, right? We're trying to heal childhood, and then we're trying to heal previous relationships.
But why do you go back to the same thing? Because
unconsciously, the familiar is actually, we prefer the familiarity of virtually misery than the unfamiliarity of the unknown. It's safer for us. If we go to the soft drink fridge, or I think you guys call them soda, if you go to there, why do you always choose the same one? Whether it's 7-Up, Coke Zero, Coca-Cola, doesn't really matter. I don't even think you guys call it Coke. I think you guys call it Coca-Cola, right? The full name. But why do you always gravitate? Because the familiar is normal to us. It's a bit like I would say to them, I don't know, I'm not going to ask you this, but whether you wipe your ass with your left hand or your right hand, try and swap it and see how that goes. I say to people in here, I'm pretty brazen. I'll say, if you're a back to fronter and you're a left or right hander, do the complete opposite and see how you go. See how long you do it for, or see how uncomfortable it is. That's what we're doing when we choose another partner, because it's not about getting a different partner. It's becoming a different partner. It's about becoming a different partner.
Why is it important for men to reframe their relationship with vulnerability after a divorce? A lot of men want to be the hunter-gatherer and they don't want to show that side. Why is that?
Because I think they feel like it's going to be taken advantage of. I think we hear these horror stories of being taken advantage of, that any sort of vulnerability is shown as weakness. when it's two completely different things. Vulnerability and weakness are two completely different things. I think you can be vulnerable without being weak. You can be very vulnerable without being weak. And I think that it's safer to just not go there. There's a little story that I love, and there's this guy looking for his keys, and it came out of a book. I didn't create it. There's a guy looking for his keys under the street light, his car keys, he's lost them, and the policeman turns up. And the policeman says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm looking for my car keys." He says, "Oh, okay, I'll give you a hand." So they look for about half an hour under this street lamp. And all of a sudden, the policeman gets the shits, and he says to him, "Are you sure you lost the car keys here?" And he says, "No, I left them over there in the dark, but it's way too scary to look over there." Well, that's what's going on inside of us.
Oh, man.
We don't want to look because vulnerability is seen as weakness, especially I don't know about in the US or over there, but it's almost like where most of our fathers will try and want us to be these hunter-gatherer, strong men, and then our mothers want us to be the opposite. So there's this confusion going on.
Wow. And closing up, what's one piece of advice you'd give to men who feel stuck in the same patterns after a divorce? What do you tell them? How do they reframe? How do they move someplace else into that dark space?
Number one thing really is to get yourself a men's group or get yourself another man or a bunch of men who are on the same journey, because there's no good going to talk to somebody who has not healed their divorce. This is a classic example, and I'm off topic, but I'm not here. I go up to the club. I don't drink. I'm in recovery for drug and alcohol addiction, but I go to the local pub or club for lunch, and I go to the bar, and there's this guy on the bar stool, right? He's, I don't know, he's older than us, and he's drinking, and I say, "How you going, mate?" "Oh, fuck, let me tell you." And he starts telling me, "Oh, and this fucking bitch did this, and she took all half my money, and I didn't get to see the kids." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, man, that's a pretty rough trot. When was that?" And he says, "Oh, I don't know, I think about 1983. And I'm looking at him thinking, "Fuck, dude, you've been on the bar stool since 1983 and you haven't got well." And I think you mentioned that some men from you are part of faith communities and stuff, or people that listen. There's a story in the Bible, and I'm not a Christian, but I'll read anything, where apparently, and this is my version, where Jesus comes up against the guy lying beside the lake who's been unwell for all these years, and he's moaning and complaining on his bed that he can't get into the wellspring of eternal life because somebody keeps getting in front of him. And Jesus, apparently, the man just looks at him and says, "Do you want to get well?" And the guy says, "Yeah, of course I do." And he says, "Pick up your bed and walk." And that's my version of that story. In other words, it's get around some men that'll make you accountable. It wasn't all her, right? Yeah, the catalyst for the breakup might have been her, or now she's... One thing I do want to say on here is, when me and my ex-partner split up, I felt at the time that she went pretty hard on me financially. And this is a big thing that we talk about, right? "Oh, this bitch took half of this," or "this bitch took half of that." And I'm being blunt here, and this is what I hear a lot, right? What I want to say there is, going back to this part of the brain, there's three main things we get triggered of in the world, and this is all of us. Our social instinct, which really comes from thousands of years ago. If we got kicked out of the tribe, we would die. Our security instinct, which again is the same thing. We need security to live, as in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, virtually at the bottom of the triangle says we need food, air and water. And then the next thing up from that is we need security, we need shelter, we need that sort of stuff. Or our sexual instinct. So straight away, unfortunately for my ex-partner, I was the breadwinner, right? I was the one who, and she had a child from a previous relationship, and then we had our young child. And when I left, I pretty much removed all her security. So unfortunately, the thing for her was to try and get some security back. And so then there was a court system, and there was solicitors, and there was all this. And anyway, we came to an agreement before court, which was probably more than I wanted to give her and not as much as she wanted, if that's the truth of the matter. And people get we take it personally. So this is one thing I want to really say before we end is we take things personally that are just instinctual. So all she was doing was she was trying to get security for her and her two daughters, and I was trying to get security for me and my two daughters. And here we are butting heads, and we're both having a different view of this.
Yep.
And really, at the end of the day, I hold no grudge against her. At the time, if you had got me 8 years ago when it was happening, I probably would have been a different person. But thankfully, I was in therapy intensely then at the same time. But what I'm saying is, and we've had a conversation since where I made an amends to her for almost leaving so abruptly. And she made an amends for me saying, I wish that never happened, and I wish I never listened to too many people or the solicitor, because we did go through a couple of years of stress. So as all I'm saying there is trying to really take it on the other person. What's going on for them here? I'm only seeing my version, but what's actually going on for them? Like you said about controlling the other party. How does my ex-wife or my ex-partner see me as a parent? And how does she see me trying to control her life? And is she trying to control my life? Because this is the problem. It's a lot of the time it's a co-control, right? It's almost like I'll give you the kids, but they need to call me 4 times a day and you need to tell me exactly where you're taking them. And if you go more than 20 kilometres from your home, I need to know. Fucking no, that's not happening. You need to trust me. I will trust you with my child and I won't interfere in your life. But you need, even though you might dislike me, what you said before, you got to love your kids more than you hate your ex-partner.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to love the kids enough. I love it. I'm going to steal that. So
let my guys out there know where to find your podcast and where to find your book. And I'll have it in the show notes too.
Yeah, great. So I've virtually put my name up here if they see that as well for Chad Taylor, It's You. So I'm on Instagram and TikTok under that handle, chadtaylor.itsyou. My website is Chad Taylor Psychotherapy. Just type that in, you'll find me. My book's on Shopify. It's on Amazon. I've got an audio book that I recorded myself, so it's a little bit raw and ready, but it's on Audible, it's on Amazon, it's on Shopify. Yeah, I'm sure if you type in my name, you'll probably find me. And I'd love to, if you do come across my book, or if anyone listening here owns a cafe or somewhere public, I'm trying to get as many books out for free as I can to public places, just more of I'm dropping them all locally here as more of a highlight a bit, write your name, write your comment, write what you disagree with, and then leave it back in a public place. Like, I haven't written this book to make money. It's not about money for me. 10% of the proceeds go to a charity in Bali. So 10% of all the proceeds from my book I send to a charity in Bali who look after disabled kids, and they get fresh water and things to Indonesian communities. So yeah, if you want to find me, I'm sure you'll find me. And the podcast has the same name, It's You, oh fuck, it's me. If you want to come on, anyone out there, if you read my book and you want to come on and have a chat, just get in contact with me. I take anyone and everyone. I just want the world to be a better place for all of us, men, women, kids, everyone.
Hell, I might take you up on that.
Yeah, you're coming on for sure.
Man, this has been interesting, sans the freaking electronics snafu. But yeah, we're going to make a podcast out of this. And I've already got the title, and it's going to shock you when I send it to you. That's all I got to say.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So hold on the mic. Don't go anywhere. Oh, man, that was